All my fellow mama bears from the Mama Bear Mastermind community. Recently, my really good friend, she started this platform for moms to come together and be a resource and provide tools to other moms in areas that we maybe have some levels of expertise in through experience, and also to have a place for us to reach out to one another when we need some support or some help or some tips or guidance or just good vibes sent our way. So everybody in this group, every mom I know, outside of this group, inside this group, every mom is a master in one way or another. And I'm not talking about a formal education or any kind of training or certifications. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the school of hard knocks. Like moms, we do it all. Some of it we rock at. We totally are just killing it. And other things we are just flying by the seat of our pants. And so really, Mama Bear Mastermind is meant to kind of cater to both of those things. Who can help us when we're flying by the seat of our pants, and who can we help when we're killing it? So who am I? My name is Nicole, and I am Cub Dream It, which is an extension of Mama Bear Mastermind, and it's also an extension of a women's blog that I do called Girl Dream It. And really the point of my platform is helping our little cubs pursue their dreams in the face of adversity, specifically a learning disability, and kind of secondhand with that, some experience with the special education department in public schools, really specifically Utah, but there's some federally regulated things in there that I know as well. So I come to you with that in mind. So just a little introduction of myself. Don't mind me here. I've got my Christmas tea. My name is Nicole, and I have a 9-year-old son. He's in 4th grade, and he is dyslexic. And our journey to get to where we are today, for both him and myself as his mom and his number one advocate, is it's been a long haul, blood, sweat, and tears, and literally tears. And I want to be able to share our story. I never realized how much I've learned, and how much I can then pass along to other moms out there. So back in September, September is Dyslexia Awareness Month, and I did on Girl Dream It a really long post, and I tried to shorten our journey as much as possible, but I put out there what our journey has been like with my son for dyslexia, getting to the root of what his reading troubles were, and after getting to the root, then where do we go from there, and how do we get the school to help him the way that he needed to be helped. So I'll kind of go into more details on, our story, our journey, and some other posts. Today, I really want to touch on what we call an alternative learning profile. So Cub Dream It was kind of created. My son, he wants to be a helicopter pilot, but recently somebody told him, you can't do that because there's so much reading that goes into training and practicing and all this kind of stuff, and you can't read. You're not very good at it. It crushed him, and in turn crushed me, and then I was mad because I was like, who would say that? Like, that's awful. And so my son then, he's at this age where he's kind of just figuring out what dyslexia is and how it impacts him and how it's going to impact him on a long-term level. I mean, it's something he'll have for the rest of his life. It's not, there's no cure, because technically it's not a disorder. It's not a disorder at all. And so I just wanted to give a little bit of background information about dyslexia. It is way more than just reading letters and numbers backwards and rearranging things in words and rearranging words. When we first started down this journey, my knowledge of dyslexia was so narrow and limited. And once I really dove headfirst into this new world for us, I learned so much about my own ignorance. So dyslexia it's a struggle for a reader with word decoding, phonological and phonetic, sorry, I can't talk, awareness, and also reading fluency. So it impacts reading. It oftentimes impacts comprehension, and spelling and writing also take a hit generally with dyslexia. Now, dyslexia is where everyone's on a scale. It's not like a number 1 through 10, but there's a spectrum, and there are some people with less severe dyslexia and there are some with more severe dyslexia. But the statistics show that 1 in 10 people in the world have dyslexia. So in the United States alone, that is over 30 million people. And yet to this day, our knowledge is so limited. It's like what I thought before I started digging into all of this. And so going back to what is dyslexia? Well, the ADA, the American Disabilities Act, labels it as a disability, which I guess in this case can be a good thing. And it meets the criteria for disability because it limits major life activities, obviously reading and writing. And so that's what the ADA, or how the ADA defines it. Health insurance is a little bit different. They categorize it on a different level. They see it as a learning disability, not a physical or mental disability. So therefore, dyslexia, any kind of treatment, remediation, testing, anything, it's not ever covered by insurance, which is really sad because testing can be so astronomically expensive. And so because of that, most dyslexics actually go self-diagnose because it's so expensive to go out there and get the testing that's needed. But anyway, so in like the scientific community, with doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, dyslexia is more regarded as a neurobiological genetic disorder. And so in our house, so the concept of an alternative learning profile was introduced to me by Ben Foss, who has written books on dyslexia. The Dyslexia Empowerment Plan is amazing, and I think he's amazing, and he opens up my eyes to a whole another world. And so we have like our mainstream learning culture, and then we have alternative learning profiles. And kids with dyslexia aren't the only ones with alternative learning profiles. There's all kinds of ADHD, dyscalculia, I'm not saying that correctly, dysgraphia, all of those things, would fall into the category of an alternative learning profile, which basically just means I learn differently. I need to take a different approach. And And it's really important to us, especially with my son, that we address this as a learning profile rather than a disability. There is such a stigma that goes with the word disability. And it's like people think when they hear disability, they think not normal, maybe broken, that something's wrong. But there's nothing wrong with my son. There's nothing broken about him at all. And he's completely normal, quote unquote. You know, and just a side note, dyslexia is not a result of low IQ. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's not. So if your child is taking an IQ test to help determine reading problems like this, it's pointless. It's a waste of time. The IQ test doesn't indicate anything when it comes to things like dyslexia. So anyway, clinically speaking, there is no actual definition for normal. And yet we put such an emphasis in our culture on you being normal or not being normal. And for a 4th grade kid, you know, he just wants to fit in with his peers, and the idea of not being normal is obviously very crushing. You know, many people, even adults with dyslexia, will say, my childhood was awful because I felt ashamed and I felt unworthy. And I would try to hide, you know, my disability, because I didn't know what else to do. I was ashamed to get picked on, you know, and so my son is trying to come into his own, and I try to encourage him, my husband and I try to encourage him in the home to understand this isn't a disability. There's nothing wrong with you. You just have an alternative learning profile, which simply means you just need a different approach. You know, like he's fully capable of learning the exact same material that all of his peers learn in the classroom. And he does really well. He excels with math and science. But the key is to give him this information, his education, in a way that he can learn and process it. So when we finally got his IEP in place, one of the things on his IEP is that he gets reading support on his exams when he's not being tested specifically on his ability to read. And now that we're in 4th grade, that's kind of, it's kind of gone away mostly. But I was really adamant that, you know, that be a component of his IEP, because I wanted him tested on his knowledge of the material rather than his ability to read the questions about the material. And so once we got that taken care of, oh my gosh, it was like night and day difference. His scores and everything just went through the roof because he was actually being tested on what he knew about the subject matter. And so that was just, you know, a great way I was able to demonstrate to my son, hey, look what happens when we take a different approach for your learning, for your education, and give you, you know, a different approach because of the alternative learning profile. You do amazing. You do great. You know the same things as your classmates, and there's nothing broken. It just means we take a different path to get there, you know. In the very beginning of our struggle, he got a lot of, you need to try harder. You need to read more. This will eventually click. And I swear to you, the next person who was going to say that to me, I was going to like throw my shoe at them. And this wasn't a matter of my son not trying hard enough or not reading enough. There was something bigger at play here. But when you're telling a child that, especially at such a young age, they begin to think, I'm not good enough. Like, I'm working so hard and putting everything I have into this, but you're telling me I need to work harder. Or I'm spending 20 to 30 minutes every single night reading, every single night, and you're telling me I need to read more? And yet the outcome doesn't change. You know, he still struggles because trying harder and reading more wasn't the solution to the problem. Not at all. But it's those kinds of things, and I know they're meant well, but it's those kinds of things that start to put this little voice in the back of my son's head that says, I'm not good enough, I can't do this, and I'm not worthy. And so that's why my husband and I really fight using the term disability when we work with my son on his dyslexia. Because I don't want that stigma that comes along with it put in the back of his mind. I want him to understand that he just needs to learn with an alternative approach, something beyond, you know, mainstream education and culture. And I want him to be proud of who he is. You know, so many people, adults in particular, that I've researched and read stories on that have dyslexia, they tried so hard to fight it rather than embrace it. And it made things so much harder. And so when my son can identify and say, well, there's nothing wrong with me, then he's more likely to find a way to use this as a strength in his life. You know, so unfortunately in our school system, well, it means it's fortunate and unfortunate at the same time. We really, as teachers, present so much of what they're educating their students on, their lessons, in one approach. And it's slowly actually moving away from that, because what we were realizing, or are realizing, is that when we take one approach in the classroom, we are limiting all those students to this one way to do something. And it's hard for a teacher, I totally get it, if they have 30 students, to come into there every day and have 30 different approaches. It's not realistic. Nothing's going to get done. No one's going to be taught. But at the same time, we can change up our curriculum a little bit, restructure some things to accommodate for some of the outliers in the group. Now, more extreme situations are going to need to be dealt with in a different manner with different kinds of intervention. But sorry, I'm kind of reviewing some notes here. I wrote some things down for myself. But anyway, what I'm saying is, you know, the teachers my son has had have been amazing. Just amazing. The school that I worked with, the IEP team, they were awful. And so even when my son was denied the first couple times his IEP, his teachers still recognized a need for him and acknowledged that he had a greater need, and they really went above and beyond to accommodate him. And, you know, now that we have finally his IEP in place, you know, they go above and beyond. His teacher this year, I can't even like praise her enough, because she's been so amazing. So, you know, so definitely when I'm saying that, you know, we come into our classrooms and our teachers only teach in one way. That's not a dig toward our teachers at all, because teachers They're the most amazing things. And it's been these teachers that have made the biggest difference in my son's life, in his success, as well as my ability as his mom to advocate for him, and give me more information and support. You know, so my goal as his mom is to take the feelings of shame and inadequacy out of the equation so that he can move forward and learn. Just learn and enjoy it. So for example, last year he was introduced to audiobooks. And obviously, as a struggling reader, reading books was never fun. And then you've got his mom here who is an author, and I write my blog, and my education is in English, and I can't read enough sometimes. So it was like our worlds were complete opposite, and it was so sad to me that he didn't like to read. But I get it. Like, nobody likes to do something that's hard and challenging and stressful. Nobody likes to do that. So anyway, so he was opened to this world of audiobooks, and suddenly he was like, he couldn't get enough of them. Mom, I want this book. Mom, I just listened to this book. Mom, I loved this book. And I was like, this is amazing, because he's getting the same material, just again with a different approach. This was, you know, audio. Eye reading is, you know, technically considered normal in our culture. But with technology, we are able to expand and step out of those boundaries. And it's making all the difference in the world for my son and the direction that he's moving in from here on out. So really my goal is to help, you know, I know I won't be able to eliminate it, but to reduce as much as possible his feelings of inadequacy, his insecurities, and this idea that something is wrong with him. And so that's why we present this, you know, as a learning, an alternative learning profile. So that's what we do at home. So it starts in our home. And then it goes to his teachers, because there are 3 models of people in our children's lives that help formulate who they are and who they become. And they're the biggest influencers in their lives when, you know, they're 9 years old. And that'd be, you know, their parents, their teachers, and their peers. And so as I established, we already do this at home. And then I've introduced it to his teachers, who've been incredibly receptive to any and all suggestions. And none of them have felt like I stepped on any kind of toes when I gave them some basic information about dyslexia, just because there's such a lack of awareness about what it is, and what it all entails, and the things that we can do about it. And so his teachers, you know, they're in school now, and they work with him, and they take that approach as well. You know, we're not putting this stifling label on his dyslexia. We're just saying, hey dude, you're a normal 9-year-old. Sure, we got to take a different way to your reading. Like, no big deal. And we all have strengths. We all have weaknesses, right? This is just his weakness. Mine is numbers. You can ask my friends. You know, and then obviously the third component to that is his peers. And there's nothing I will ever be able to do about that. Any mom knows that kids can be rotten sometimes, and it's just life. But if I can equip him at home to feel, and his teachers can equip him in school to feel comfortable with his dyslexia, to understand it, and to have some confidence because he knows how to push through, and what approaches work for him and what doesn't, then hopefully he will be able to combat and advocate for himself a little bit when it comes to his peers, because some of them are really, really great. and they're super supportive, and others are just mean. I mean, but that's kids. Like, you're gonna have that, you know, you could wear an ugly sweatshirt one day and you're gonna have kids that are on you about that. So, you know, reading isn't the exception. So he's still going to encounter that. So ultimately what I'm saying is that we, like I said, we call it an alternative learning profile to step away from this stigma that comes with disability and this idea that he's not normal. And I'll kind of expand on this in another episode because this is getting to be kind of long. But we did this thing called a strength star chart. Also a Ben Foss thing, by the way. And it basically takes all these different categories, you know, reading, writing, math, science, you name it, like all these different categories, and you rate yourself based on, you know, certain questions, and then you create on the graph your star. And it's meant to highlight our strengths and our weaknesses. Everybody has them. There is nothing wrong with knowing where your weak spots are. And so we did this. We've done this with our family. We did it with some of our neighbor kids, some of his friends. And the point was to show my son visually that no two people are alike. So just because he's the only one in that group with dyslexia, does that mean he's not normal? Like, let's look at everybody else that did this, and we'll learn that there is no definition for normal. There is none. So if there's no definition for that, then he can't be not normal. And so, like I said, I'll go into more detail on that some other time. I'll show you what it is and the pictures, and it's so much fun. So I just wanted to introduce myself a little bit. I'll go into more detail in some other posts about our journey, some of the specifics, some more information on dyslexia. Also, you know, the special education departments, you know, I'm really familiar with them on a district, state, and federal level. And so I feel like I have, you know, some resources and information that I can maybe provide to somebody else. I'm always open to people giving me information. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I can't just learn enough. I want to consume every ounce of information that I can. So with that said, I hope all of you mama bears have a really good week. You know, it's Monday. We're coming up to Christmas. Things are getting really crazy and hectic, and I'm sure your kids are wild. But hang in there and use this platform. Use Mama Bear Mastermind to your advantage. And let's go out there and, as a group of moms, work it so that we can all go out there and kill it. So that's really just what I have to say for you tonight. And I hope you all, like I said, have a great rest of your week. Bye.